I always like to write whatever I know, which I think is valuable, helpful to others. I always, since last 20 plus years, since my college days or since I started my IT job in Wipro Technologies, I used to create all the papers for all my team members, create anything useful which I think will help everyone. I was always the lead for that repository, creating those documentation, creating the blogs, creating Facebook groups, creating WhatsApp groups. So that's one of my hobby, uh, which I think is helping others also. Uh, so in that process, I organized over 200 plus webinars in last 2 plus years related to education, right? It can be about what is SAT, ACT, PSAT, or about memory power techniques, mind power techniques for students, immigration related concepts, taxation, medical, investment strategies, business opportunities, what are the new technologies on IT, how to control our mind in this type of panic situation. So related to various concepts, everything which is useful for our community. I arranged over 200 plus, and most of the group members know about all those sessions. I'm also a financial professional, so in case if anybody needs any help with kids' college saving strategies, will and trust, or any other investment diversification strategies, you can always reach to me. And also, we have few more webinars in pipeline. One of them is like how to build wealth during recession. That is on 4/4 at 7 p.m. Then ABCs of Bitcoin, right? Again, ration period, Bitcoin, it is growing. Nearly it grown 10% in last 1 week. So one of the subject matter expert is going to explain about Bitcoin, how it will grow in next 1 or 2 years. Then we have sessions on importance of AP courses. Then about a primer on college essays, about Harvard, Stanford, Duke, Georgetown, Penn information session, Brown, Chicago, Columbia, Cornell Rice information session. And there are a lot more sessions in pipeline, but these are some of the things which are more useful to the students and kids and their parents. So I listed such type of sessions here. And that's my email address. So in case of any feedback, or if you want to get information about more concepts, more topics related to students, or anything which is useful for our community, you can always send me a mail, or you can send me a message on my mobile number. Then I would like to introduce my friend, my business partner, Mr. Santosh Chapiala. Uh, we also call him Bobby. Santosh is resident of Houston since last nearly 10 plus years. He's also a financial professional. He's also an expert in kids college saving strategies, investment diversification strategies. He helped hundreds of families since last few years. And again, if you have any questions, you can always reach to Santosh on that email, or you can message him on that phone number. And we have one more speaker. Most of you already know, Mr. Raj Kamal Garu. He is helping through this series of webinars for all, helping all the parents and all the middle school, high school kids through all his expertise, through all his wisdom. Um, uh, so again, I don't want to take much time with the introduction. Let's get into the topic. So, college funding options, right? We three will be talking about this today, me, Santosh, and Raj Kamal Garu. So to start with, why we all need to know about this college funding options. What is that? Why it is that much important concept, right? So first thing is we all are, or minimum 90% of us are first generation here, right? So our parents are in India. We came for MS, or we came through some company like Wipro, TCS, Infosys, and we are here. We are planning to settle down here. Some of us are green card, some of us are citizens, some of us are on H1Bs, visas, whatever it is. Most of us, 90 to 95% of the members or who are on the call, we all are first citizens, and most of us think things work here in the same way like as in India, because we all came from India. We assume that everything will be same, but most of the things, right, including your will and trust, including your retirement planning, including your kids' education, things are a lot more different. Things are much more, right? Especially we think like schooling, because we don't pay much fees for our elementary or middle school, high school. We also assume that even college might be very cheap here, but it's a lot more expensive. And also there are a lot more things where we and we don't have a proper way to get that information also, because there is nowhere, your company, your HR, nobody will teach you what will be the cost of education for your kids, or they won't teach you what will be your cost for your retirement. So we will be under that assumption that things will be fine here. We can we can uh, we can basically easily live with our savings. But most of us are in the range of 80,000 to 100K, 150K, whatever it is. We know how is the job market now, and we know how much we are saving per month, right? With the as kids are growing, whatever we make, it can be 80,000, 100K, 150K. If I take average salary as 100K, whatever we are getting, we are basically spending for our house or home rentals or house EMIs, for the kids schooling, kids expenses, their Kuman, their taekwondo classes, their drawing classes, our groceries, our India travel or some vacations. So basically we are not able to save much, right? Maximum, if we save, it may be 1,000 or $500 or something. We are not able to see the risks we are taking. So the retirement is much more expensive. Kids education is much more expensive. There is a huge risk of medical expenses in retirement. But because there is nobody who is trying to educate us, trying to create that awareness, we all are missing that basic point, right? But ignorance, right? We cannot say that I don't know, so I cannot pay that, right? Ignorance, you cannot use ignorance as an excuse. So that's why we have all these sessions, or we are trying to create that awareness amongst our parents, our community, so that we all understand what is that it will cost for retirement, or what is that it will cost for your kids education, what is that it will cost for your medical expenses, all such type of things, so that it is always better to be prepared rather than sorry, right? Or we all know prevention is better than cure. That's why we all are maintaining that social distance also now, right? So that's the reason today's session we want to understand how much it will cost and what are the different ways and what are the risks we are taking in today's session. So as you can see on the slide, mainly we have two types of colleges. We have public colleges, we have private colleges. Just like in India, here also we have two different type of colleges. So for example, if your kid is around 18 years old, you are looking approximately at a cost of 94,607 for a public college, whereas for a private college, you are looking around 214K 946. And the inflation is very, very high with respect to the kids college education. In general, your inflation is 3.2% if we take last 20 years average. But in kids college, kids expenses, kids education expenses, it is nearly double than that. So if your kid is around 16 years of age, you are looking at an approximate cost of 104K. If it is a private college, you are looking at 236K. Because of the inflation, for example, if your kid is around 2 years old, so instead of 94, it is nearly getting more than doubled. So you are looking approximate expenses of 206K for a public and 469K for a private college. All these are based on JP Morgan Asset Management College Planning Essentials 2020 edition, right? And with this type of recession or with this type of corona situation, things might get much more tougher, right? So these numbers are like last 2 months or 3 months before the corona situation. Because of corona, what happens? Basically, because of the recession, there will be more taxes. Everything will increase for us. It will make our life much more tougher. So we should be prepared for these type of expenses. Then, so now you all got how much it may cost based on your kids' age. If they are 12, if they are 10, if they are 8, whatever it is, you know approximately at what cost you are looking for the kids' college education. Then it is not only tuition fee, there are multiple factors as part of the kids' college. You have college tuition, and also you have a lot of other expenses like apparel, or your kids want to have a car, they want to go to Starbucks, they need gas, they need housing, they need medical care. So if you can see that tuition fees, the average annual increase is nearly 6.3%. So our inflation is 3.2, whereas your tuition fee is increasing at a rate of 6.3, approximately nearly double the inflation, right? So that's one major risk we all are taking. We are not considering, we are thinking like it will be easy, it will be fine, we can easily pay with our savings, but we are not seeing the risk of inflation here. Then what are the various ways we are paying for colleges now? One of the way is student borrowing, especially in our community, right? This graph shows the entire community. It consider all the races, but especially in Indian community, in Desi community, student borrowing is very, very negligible, right? We always try to, because we came from India, we want to support our kids for their entire education. So we borrow. So that parent borrowing here, it is 10%, but if we only look at Indian community chart, then it might be around 20%, 25%. Then parent income and savings, approximately 30% of people use that source. Student income and savings, around 13%. From the grant scholarships, around 31%. Borrowing from relatives and friends, around 2%. So these are the different ways we pay for the college fees now, if we take all races in consideration. But if we take only our Indian or Desi community, then it will be more on the parent side. Parents will be paying around 60 to 70%, whereas all other factors contribute to another 30%. Then again, how do we pay for college? To get into some more details, 65% of students are contributing to their own income or savings, and 66% of parents are contributing their income and savings. Families are borrowing money. 28% of borrowers never plan to borrow, right? Because they think like, right, well, just like most of us, they think, okay, the fees may be 20,000, 15,000, like that. But when their kids grow up, until that time, they are not seeing that risk, right? Because of the inflation, right? Maybe somebody might have told you before 10 years that college will cost around 10,000, 15,000. You will be under same impression that, okay, when your kid grow up, you will be paying the 10, 15. But because of the inflation, because of lot of changes, you might be paying around 50,000, 60 or 70,000 per annum. So we are not getting ready or getting prepared with such type of savings or with such type of mechanisms, because of which we all are taking a huge risk, right? When we are not prepared, basically will be panic, will be, you will borrow at much more higher rate of interest, or you have to tell your student, even though he gets in a Harvard or some best colleges, you will ask him to get into a Houston University or somewhere, because you cannot contribute to his fees in one of the top colleges. So we unintentionally we are spoiling our kids' future, or we are impacting that without proper planning or without proper preparation. We don't want to be in that situation, especially as Indian parents. We all are here to give a better life for our kids, right? To build wealth, to give better life for our kids. But if we are not getting prepared for such type of things, basically we unintentionally spoiling their entire career or entire their future. And stress, right? Because when you are not prepared, basically we'll have more and more stress, because you don't want to be in that situation. You can see that 40.8% of undergrad students say they feel stressed about the amount of money they owe, right? We all know, many of you might have come here for your MS here, right? You know how much stress you will have, how many years you have to keep continuing paying your fees. 42% say debt was their biggest concern about applying to or attending colleges. 27% of parents worry about school raising tuition. 22% of parents worry that scholarships and grant money will be less available. And this might grow much more, right? We saw in last week's sessions from Raj Kamal Garu, where, right, this grant money, scholarships is getting more and more difficult, especially if we are on visas, then it is next to impossible. Only 4 in 10 families planned how to pay for colleges before the student began attending. That means 6 families, 60% of the families are taking a huge risk until their kid goes to the college. Till that time, they are not prepared, because there is no one to give that awareness, no one to create that education, no one there to help them or share that information. 1 in 5 families who receive a financial aid award don't feel confident they understand it. So all these are major reasons why families are feeling more and more stress about the college education. And we are not like other communities where we think, okay, college education is not important, because we all came from that background where we think education is the most important thing which kids should have. We want them to do their MS, or we want them to be postgraduates, right? Just like we did our graduation, post graduation, we want to support them, we want to help them to do as much as possible. Minimum, we want to support them for their entire education. So because of all these reasons, right, families are in more and more stress. Then moving on to the next slide, right? Again, as I mentioned from beginning, right, prevention is better than cure. We don't want to be in that 60% of families where they don't know how much they need to pay, what they need to pay, how to apply all those things until their kid is in a college. We want to be in that 40% or 20% who are preparing well, planning ahead, so that they don't have to face any issues and they are not spoiling or impacting their kids' career. Right? We want to create that awareness. We want to plan better, get all the required information, get all the useful information, so that we can help our kids to study in a college where they want to, and also help them for their better future. So there are various ways, right? Again, we have 529 plans, we have Coverdell Education Savings Account, UGMA custodial account, financial aids. We have again lot of other alternate strategies. But I would like to ask Santosh to cover on some of these, and then Mr. Raj Kamal Garu will cover on the financial aid concept. Over to you, Santosh.
Thank you, Kishore. Again, good evening, everybody. Just kind of getting directly into the presentation, right? As Kishore clearly specified and gave you a general overview of the different costs and stuff, a family or individual can plan any way they want for college, keeping in mind that time is one of the biggest factors in determining the success of the strategy. There are obviously programs designed for college savings, and they may have some advantages over other strategies for specific purposes, right? Every situation is different, and we will be discussing general concepts today, right? And the best strategy for any individual must be determined only after one has considered all the personal factors involved, including a discussion of tax implications, as an example. So we would highly recommend that you work with a knowledgeable person, a financial professional who can guide you with the best strategy that is the right fit for you. Some of the more popular strategies are 529 college savings plan, right? Which, again, 529 plans, commonly known as qualified tuition plans, are sponsored by states, state agencies or educational institutions, and are authorized by Section 529 of the Internal Revenue Code. It's the IRS tax code, right? Contributions to the plan are obviously after-tax dollars, and the account grows tax-free. Since the plan are sponsored by states, there are numerous plan designs and differences in accounts. As noted, there may be gift tax consequences if the contribution to the 529 plan is greater than the tax exclusion for the year. So as an example, for the current year, it's about $15,000 in 2020. Additionally, there are obvious opportunities where you can contribute lump sum to kind of catch up if you have not already done and you don't have so much time for accumulating the amount that you need. You should consult with your tax advisors and financial professionals to kind of get the specifics. In this particular kind of plan, the parent is typically the account holder, and participation in plan may reduce the eligibility for parent loans. There is no tax on distribution if total distribution for the year are less than the amount of adjusted qualified education expenses. Only certain expenses are considered qualified in the eyes of the IRS. Before taking any distributions from a 529 plan, you should be aware of your tax implications to make sure all expenses are qualified. So one last thing I want to cover in this particular slide is that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 now allows 529 plans to be used for primary and secondary educational institutions. Until this new law, funds were only eligible for the post-secondary education, right? Kishore, can you move to the next slide? Okay, so let's just look at the 529 plan at a high level, right? 529 provides diversity. The account holder can choose the underlying investment from a range of investments. The plan can also provide safety, as one can choose to safeguard against market downturns based on the investments they choose. Now, on the other side, unfortunately, its use is restricted to eligible educational expenses only. Planning today for what is expected tomorrow can sometimes prove difficult because we don't know what's in store for us tomorrow. Changes on one's circumstances and the market circumstances could change what we thought we wanted or needed in the future. Finally, the parent's eligibility for parent loans could be limited based on the account balances. Next slide, Kishore. So I want to use an example here as to what I mean by changes could happen. As I alluded to, the challenges of planning ahead in the future may not turn out to be what you originally intended, expected, or wanted, right? Let's take a hypothetical scenario of a mother and a daughter. The mom wants to fund a 529 plan to the extent that she believes she will need when her daughter is ready to go to college. Her daughter, let's call her Ashley or Sunita, is bright and hardworking and earns 2 grants to an in-state university to study logistics. If mom no longer has a qualifying educational expense to pay, there could be penalties or withdrawals. In other words, if the expenses, the money is not used for educational purposes, there are penalties. That is the point that I'm trying to drive. If withdrawals are made for other than qualified education expenses, they are subject to state and federal income taxes and an additional 10% federal tax penalty on earnings. It is important to note if tax-free scholarships are received, the mother can potentially get relief from all or portion of that 10% penalty. But note that the taxation on the gains, right? On the other hand, if mom is expecting Sunita to get a scholarship or grant and she does not, she may be left with an underfunded plan and short on money for tuition and fees. So sometimes over planning or under planning, both can kind of get us, right? So that's with an example. Now, moving on, the next plan is Coverdell Education Savings Account. We won't spend too much time on this account. Coverdell used to be called an educational IRA. It too accepted after-tax contributions and enjoyed tax-free growth and tax-free distributions if distributions are not more than the designated beneficiary's qualified education expenses for that year, which included tuition for private grade schools and high schools. Part of the new Tax Act allows Coverdell account holders to roll over their plan into a 529 plan. No tax on distributions if distributions are not more than the designated beneficiary's qualified education expenses for that specific year. Now, again, let's look at the high-level pros and cons of this plan. They're very similar to the 529 plan. The key is the tax advantages and the diversity of that investment choices on one side, balanced by the restrictions and limitations of its use and penalties for other than what was originally intended. Again, stressing on that, qualified educational expenses. It too can affect the parent's ability to qualify for parent loans. Next slide, Kishore. Okay, then let's talk about UGMA account, or it's also called as Uniform Gift to Minors Custodial Account. This is not a college funding account, but can be used for that purpose. A parent can give funds to their child. The child can use the funds for any purpose, so the parents do not maintain control of its purpose and use. Since it becomes an asset of the child, it can impact their ability to qualify for financial aid. The parents can benefit from their gift from a tax and estate perspective, as we stated earlier. There are no restrictions as to the use of the funds by the child. So there's no real control on how this control or restrictions on how these funds can be used. Right? So again, pros and cons. It has the flexibility as the funds can be used for any purpose the child chooses. There are tax advantages for the giver's estate, who can be parents, grandparents can also contribute to this. Unfortunately, the parent or the giver maintains no control of the use of the funds. The student's ability to get financial aid could be impaired because the child has this account. Okay, next slide. So financial aid, this is a good transition point to Mr. Raj. Raj, if you could take over this. Mr. Raj? I can probably get started on this slide while Mr. Raj is with us. Kishore, can you check with him, please?
Yeah, he's available.
Financial. Okay. Oh, he was muted. Sorry. So financial aid is commonly used to fund college expenses. These are comprised of grants, scholarships, loans, or sometimes paid by the student's employer, right? Such aid is usually provided by various sources such as federal and state agencies, colleges, high schools, foundations, and corporations. Grants are typically aid the student receives that need to be repaid. Loans must be repaid. Interest rates and repayment terms vary by program, and employment aid can be based on an hourly rate for the work performed if the employer offers this type of a program. So this is a very high level. Now, Raj Garu, please take over.
Raj Garu, you can unmute yourself. Or Santosh, you can also discuss on.
Sure, and I think he already covered this sometime this week or earlier last week, right, Kishore?
Yeah, he did.
Okay, that's fine. We can quickly cover this, right? The pros and cons of the financial aid, like all the other plans that we have seen, right? The pros and cons. For one thing, it offers families and students multiple different options. There are several scholarships, grants, loans, and opportunities one can apply for. Managing financial aid can be easier depending on the source. Some opportunities offered are fixed, lower rates, while others do not require awesome credit or a cosigner in some cases, right? These are just among some of the reasons for choosing financial aid. It just provides that ease for the parents who are not planned or who qualify for these. On the other hand, financial aid is not always free. Typically, the term financial aid, we kind of think that it could be, not all financial aids are free. In some cases, we do need to repay them, right? So one of every 3 financial aid dollars are actually borrowed and must be paid back with interest. Financial aid can also be unreliable. High-income families may not qualify for financial aid, and the reality is college students may not receive enough grants and scholarships to cover all costs. So bottom line, we cannot count on these. This is an additional option that we have in case we have a need for this. Kishore, I think just keeping it high level, we can probably move on to the next slide. Right? So again, the eligibility things, Mr. Kishore is more, I would say, right person. But go back to the previous slide, Kishore. I can probably at a high level cover some points, right? So the eligibility is determined by taking the total college cost each year and subtract the expected family contribution. It's called the EFC. So there is a specific way to calculate the financial aid eligibility. A family can apply as early as October 1st, the year before the college, and calculation is based on the income and the tax information from the 2 years prior to college. So that's the key, folks. And again, whenever we get Raj, he can probably provide more clarification if we need to dive deeper into that, right? So let's look how the Department of Education calculates the EFC, a family's annual income, and basically, so there are multiple factors that are considered. So here's a quick chart estimating your EFC contribution per income. And if you see this, the income has a much bigger impact than the assets. So at a high level, right, somebody, this is just an example, somebody with an income of about $150,000 and has different assets, excluding their primary residence and the retirement accounts, of about 200,000, the EFC would be about close to $43,000, right? So Kishore, we can probably move on to the next slide. Right? So in summary, while a family or individual can save any way they want for college, there are programs designed for college savings and therefore may have advantages over other strategies for the specific purpose. Every situation is different. The best strategy for any individual must be determined only after one has considered all the personal factors involved, and including a discussion with your about your tax implications with a tax professional and maybe a financial professional to kind of make sure, understand what is the best fit for your strategy, right? And some of the more popular strategies that we covered so far is the 529 college savings plan, the Coverdell education accounts, UGMA. We also covered financial aid at a very high level. And obviously, there are other alternate strategies that are available that we could kind of use. So, Kishore, the next slide, please. Right. So let me just give you a very high-level overview of some of the alternate strategies. Right. It can be used again, designed specifically based on the individual that we work with. Not one size doesn't fit all. There are multiple different strategies that Kishore and I can bring to the table. These are primarily accumulation and growth vehicles. They can grow tax deferred. And if it is structured correctly, the withdrawals can be tax free. And typically, there are no specific limitations on how much you can contribute to the plan. And the best part, it may not affect the eligibility to get financial aid. And there's no restriction on purpose of use. In other words, like we saw in the other college-specific plans that we covered so far, the proceedings can be used as long as it's used for education purposes only. There are no specific tax implications, but any other purpose, they could be penalties and things like that. And they could also impact the financial aid probability, right? So these alternate strategies basically help you with those. So let's look at the pros and cons just to kind of keep it consistent with how we are talking about, right? So basically these, if you see, it comes with the liquidity and the flexibility to use it based on the strategy that we use, right, the funds can be accessed anytime. You don't have to really wait for anything in case of emergencies or whatever. These funds could be accessible, which we call as liquidity. It gives us the flexibility and the protection and it can be used for any purpose and can provide protection against market downturns with market growth potential. So if it's designed right and certain strategies, your investment would not or might not be subject to the market downturns, the current conditions as an example, right? So obviously there are always pros and cons, and as financial professionals, we take it very seriously, and we basically want to be as transparent as possible. We will not only highlight the positives of any specific strategy, but we make sure that you are fully understanding the pros and cons, the fine print, everything before you basically set your journey on using any of these alternate strategies, right? And these are any correct investment are always long-term investments. The short-term investments typically can usually come with high risk and things like that. They might give you more returns, but also they're more risk prone, right? So this is a long-term, these strategies that we're talking about are long-term strategies. You need to give it enough sufficient time to accumulate the funds to use it for the purpose that you want to plan. And these can be pretty complex and sometimes expensive too. What I mean by expensive is basically you might have to contribute, again, depending on how much you're contributing and how long you have before you need the funds, it can be different, right? So which is why I'm repeating myself that one size doesn't fit all. We have to talk to the specific individual, understand what their specific situation is, and only then we'll be able to suggest the appropriate alternate strategy that would meet their needs. Sure, we are good to move on to the next one. I think at a high level, this is what we had wanted to cover today. And anybody that is interested in knowing more about the specific strategies and specifically on the alternate strategies, please feel free to reach out to Kishore or me or Rajgaru for the financial aid piece, and we should be able to help you out and give you a roadmap on what's the best way to prep up for your kids' future and whatever specific planning that you want to do.
Yeah.
Back to you, Kishore.
Yeah, thank you, Santosh. We have Rajgaru is back. So, Rajgaru, do you want to again give a quick summary on the financial aid? I know you already did it once. Santosh also showed it once. So maybe if we can take 5 minutes and then we can take some questions.
Sure. Thank you again for bringing me on. That was a good presentation, Santosh. I'm sorry I was in and out. I had a we had a problem here with some plumbing work. But anyway, those I'm sure many of you were at my college financial planning seminar last week. But really, I think there is only one slide that I want to show you. And maybe, Kishore, if you can hand over the screen sharing to me.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So if I'm doing it right, everybody should see this is the most important slide in this presentation. Okay, good. So really, whatever Santosh was talking about was largely about how much money you need to save to get to the destination, right, to the goal line. And what I'm going to talk about is what is the goal line, right? Because every college is different. Every college has a different sticker price. Um, Sticker price includes things like tuition and fees and books. It includes things like meal plans and residential housing and all those expenses together combined are what constitute the sticker price. Correct. So the thing is, how do you get to the sticker price? Now, obviously, it makes sense, right? I mean, if your sticker price is low, then obviously, um, you know, you wouldn't need all that money to be saved and all that. We know that. If the sticker price is high, relatively speaking, that is when you really need to have a very strong foundation, financial foundation, and you should start planning when your child is kind of young, right? We started planning for our child when he was 1.5 years old. And, right now, the 529 plans are not doing very well. We should probably have lucked out. If we had known, we should probably have taken out all the money in the 529s on February 15th or something like that, and then put it all into like a savings account. Then we would have been better off. Now I think my 529, I didn't even want to look at it, but it's been down like 35%. So the idea here is that we should this slide largely talks about the cost side. So the most important part here is what is called the estimated financial contribution. So I'm assuming that most people on this call are U.S. citizens or permanent residents, because the federal student aid program is limited to U.S. citizens and green card holders. If you are on an H-1B visa and your child is on H-4, some of this doesn't apply because there is no meaningful definition of what EFC is, because you cannot file the FAFSA. But this is for people who can file the FAFSA. And when you file the FAFSA, what the government will do is it would take a look at your income and assets, and it'll always take your prior income. So right now, if your child is attending the fall 2020 semester, then they will ask you for your 2018 tax records. And they make it very easy for you. The FAFSA process is fairly easy to go through. It is like any other online form. And once you key in your social security number, the FAFSA tool automatically goes to the IRS and will um, get out all the important fields from your tax return, like your adjusted gross income and your depreciation. I mean, sorry, your um, standard deduction or your other deductions. They will automatically be transferred to your FAFSA, and then accordingly, it enters the black box. There are lots of business rules, about 25,000 business rules, to be honest with you, because there are so many exceptions made to different individuals based on things like how many children are concurrently in college, and what is your family assets. Do you have a small business? Do you rent or live? Do you have a mortgage on your primary home? um, so they'll ask you lots of questions on the FAFSA, but ultimately the FAFSA machine sends out what is called a SAR. SAR is called the Student Aid Report. The Student Aid Report, the most important thing to look for in the SAR is this EFC, which is the Estimated Family Contribution. And essentially, what that EFC is that the federal government is saying that amount, whatever that EFC is for your situation, that is the minimum amount that you must pay. So that is a family contribution. It is not negotiable, and there is nothing you can do about it. It is what it is. So in this case, in this slide, we have the EFC for a family to be 41,000. So the cost of attending UH or UT or A&M, the sticker price is a lot less than 41,000. So that means that the government is saying you're wealthy enough to be able to afford the full sticker price at those institutions because their sticker prices are lower than your EFC. Okay, I'm sure that makes sense to everybody. Now, where, but in this case, now if your EFC were only 12,000 and the sticker price for UT was 27 or 28,000, then how you meet the difference between 12,000 and 28,000, or on this slide, the difference between 41,000 for EFC and a sticker price of 75,000, that is called the demonstrated financial need. It's also called DFN, right? So DFN is the way you bridge the gap between what you must pay and what you should pay, right? So the thing is, there are several ways to narrow the gap. Now, um, clearly, somebody with a $41,000 EFC is not going to be able to get any grants from the federal government, but there could be an institutional grant if you're applying to an Ivy League school or a good elite school. They might give you like a Ford Foundation scholarship grant, or a Phillips grant or whatever, and that might come, that will bring it down. Then there could be additional scholarships that might be awarded to you. Scholarships are typically discounts of tuition. And then there are tax credits. If your income is $150,000 or less, you can take, this is family income, AGI. You can simply apply to the federal government when you do your taxes and say, my kid is in school, my kids are in school, so allow me to take a tax credit, and you will essentially pay $2,000 less in taxes that year, for as many years your children are in college. And then of course there are all there, you cannot take both credits and deductions, but there is also, there is another program where you can take a deduction. There is actually an excellent IRS tool that will look at your income and will tell you how much credits or deductions you qualify for. Notice that all of this is real money, and real money is reducing the sticker price. And when your sticker price ultimately drops after all these grants, scholarships, and tax credits, which is free money, then this intermediate line is what is called the net price. So just as the EFC is non negotiable and it is the family minimum contribution, the net price is also a family contribution, um, because you are responsible for the net price. That is where Santosh's presentation and Kishore Garu's presentation earlier help, because those essentially, how are you going to make the gap between EFC and net price? So Santosh talked about 529s. There were Coverdell plans, and then there might be other plans. The UGMA, all of those plans ultimately are ways to get you from EFC to net price. But remember, you are still responsible for everything up to net price. And it doesn't always have to be just dollars. Oftentimes, the SAR will consist of what is called a work study line item, where in this case, it is your child that will bear the burden of that work study. Your child will be working in the computer science department, in a lab or front office or whatever. And for every hour of work, he or she will get $15 or whatever is the rate for that school, and that money will be applied to the college pricing ladder. So there it is not dollars, but there it is work, right? Effort. But regardless, it is the family that has to bear the burden. So um, finally, there are loans, right? So the last part of this equation is where you can get loans from the federal government. I had a call with a client who called me this on Monday. He's from India, and he called because another person who attended our call last week referred this person to me, because this person has a unique situation where they're all American citizens, but they're living in India and they don't have a very high income in dollars. But this child has gotten into 5 different schools, and the SAR essentially says that they have a subsidized loan for a small amount and an unsubsidized loan. But the subsidized and the unsubsidized loans together amounted to only 5,500, whereas this boy, he was applying to many schools, and the net price, the sticker price was 35,000 or 37,000 or 38,000. So there were like six schools. They were all in the 35 to 40,000 bracket. The EFC was 21,000. So how do you make the difference? Because the loans don't complete the equation, right? So in that instance, parents can always take what is called a parent plus loan. It's called a direct plus loan, and it is offered by the federal government, and it really covers the entire demonstrated financial need. So from the EFC all the way to the sticker price, less the discounts, so essentially net price, the whole amount can be covered by what is called the direct plus loan. Now, the advantage of the direct plus loan is the interest rates will not change. Right now, the interest rate is set to 7.08%, and there is a loan origination fee of 4.26%. So it's kind of expensive. And as you know, the Federal Reserve has really cut interest rates down to zero. So there are private loans through Discover or through Sally Mae that can be a better option for students and families who want to meet the difference between EFC and net price. Some rates that I saw were like 4.25%, which is much better. But again, those are variable. So it's like the kind of discussions that you would go through within at the dinner table about how you finance your home, right? 15 years or 30 years, this bank or that bank based on variable interest rates. You want to do fixed rate or variable plus fixed. There are all kinds of combinations, and all of those things you have to think about when you have to borrow to go to college, right? So at this point, I'm going to stop. I'm sure. I think this is kind of, I think, what I think was the missing piece when Santosh and Kishore were talking, because now we kind of know what is the cost side, and essentially how you how you meet the cost is really what this pricing ladder is all about. And at this point, I'm going to hand you over to either Santosh or Kishore, and
Yeah.
I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Rajgaru. Yeah, there are a few questions, and yeah, you or Santosh can answer those. So let us take next 10 minutes. We'll take the questions whichever we can, and then remaining ones we can have another interactive session with all Q&A.
Sure.
So the first question, we see only till Bitcoin on Eventbrite. Yeah, Mr. Iyer. So I did not create events for each and every session as of now, but you can follow that page, Eventbrite page, and you can see all the events. So I'm creating only like whatever are in the next week. I created only those events. But if you follow my page, you'll be seeing all another 20 sessions before the end of this COVID. Let's learn more and more, which are useful to each and every family. Then moving on to the next.
So, Kishore,
Yes, Santosh.
Kishore, sorry, I do see some right at the beginning of the session and probably sent just to me. So if you don't mind, can I cover that? That way we are covering it in that order.
Sure. Yeah.
So first question I see is, can a 529 be transferred to another sibling if the first kid doesn't need it? The answer is yes, within the, I would say, the bloodline. But Rajgaru, do you have any specific more details?
Yeah, 529s are very flexible within the family. So yes, you can easily transfer the available funds in the 529 plan to another person within the family. The definition of family is also fairly broad. You can keep the money yourself. The child can keep the money for maybe grad school, or the child can, or you as the account holder can move it to another sibling. Yes, the answer is yes.
Thank you. The next question is, if I open a 529 in Texas and move to a different state, what happens to the 529? 529 is, to my knowledge, can still be, as long as it's used for educational purposes. I don't think state or the borders would matter. Rajgaru, anything that you would add?
100% right. The 529, the reason it's called 529 is it is an item in the tax code, in the federal tax code. So any amount within a 529 plan, it doesn't matter in which state you live. You can easily withdraw money. You can be in a state, your child can be in a different state. You could establish your 529 when you're in one state. You can move to another state, but the 529 is completely portable. The only reason that 529s could be state specific, the only place where I think uh, the state 529, which state you live in matters, is for the purposes of state income tax. And Texas doesn't have a state income tax. There are 7 other states that don't have an income tax. So if you're moving from, if you're moving from Texas and you have your 529 in the state of Texas, and you move to a high state, a high income tax state like California, then essentially your contributions to your 529s in the Texas 529 are not tax deductible in the state of California because you've moved to California. Now, if you were in California, if you're always in California, and if you have a 529 plan there, then essentially, because it's a high tax state, all of your contributions, I'm sorry, all of your disbursements and contributions are tax deductible, and that's a big deal when you're in a high income tax state. But from Texas to any other state, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Yeah, Kishore, all yours. I think those are the questions I saw.
sure. Thanks, Bobby. Thanks, Santosh. Rajkar, another question. So, is there a difference in the fee between H1s and citizens for the
The
college
fee
education?
meaning what fee is that,
The
Kishore?
like tuition fee or
Yeah, so that is a slightly different question. There are two ways. So first of all, so let me step back. Um, if you are sending your child to a private college, there is no difference in fees. I mean, Bill Gates' son will pay the same fees at Rice University as your child would. There is really no difference in private colleges. So fee structures only matter for public institutions, and because it's public, they have lots of rules. So two rules apply here. So if you are on H1B and your child graduates from a Texas high school, and this is an and condition. Many of you are software engineers, so you understand an and condition. So not only should your child graduate from a Texas high school with a Texas diploma, your child must also have been in that Texas high school for the last 3 years leading to the diploma. Okay. So when you do that, that means that then your child will automatically qualify for in-state tuition at any Texas public school, whether it is UT or whether it's UH or UT San Antonio or Texas A&M or Texas Tech, Texas State, Sam Houston, doesn't matter which one. You will automatically qualify for your child will automatically qualify for in-state tuition, although your child is currently on H4, right? Most likely your child is on H4 because your child is less than 18. So in that case, what your child could do is when your child starts college, then your child could convert to an F1 visa, but still maintain the in-state classification on the strength of graduating from a Texas high school and being in the high school for 3 years leading to graduation, right? That is one condition. That is how you can pay in-state tuition just like your neighbor who is an American citizen, who is a resident of Texas. The second way you can ensure that your child will pay in-state tuition is based on the parent's job. As long as the parent is living in Texas on an approved visa, an H-1B is an approved visa. It can be, you can be on J-1, you can be on any visa. As long as you are in the state of Texas, working and contributing to Texas commerce, living in a home and all that, as long as you are a resident of Texas, although you are not a citizen of the state of Texas, right? Your that is of the US, your child will qualify for in-state treatment because of your, meaning the parents, status. Okay. Now, what happens if you're an H-1B, your child enters UT Austin on the second classification, not the first, because maybe you guys moved to Texas in the 11th, in your child's 11th grade. 11th and 12th is only 2 years. Child graduated from Texas high school, but not for 3 years. Therefore, the child automatically is out of state. However, parents are living and working in Texas, so the child again gets back the in-state classification. Correct? Now, what happens if the child enters UT Austin, has been there for 6 months, and you're an H-1B, you work for a company, and your company sends you to Illinois, and you're forced to move your family to Illinois, but your child is still at UT, then technically your child will have to start paying out of state tuition starting the second year at UT, because the link that the child had with the parents has been broken when it comes to Texas domicile, and therefore your child does not qualify, and your child becomes an out of state student, and therefore the tuition fees will go up. This rule, by the way, is kind of uniform across all states, right? It is not just Texas. So I hope that answered the question, Kishore Garu.
Yeah, Rajgaru. Another extension to that question. For example, if there is a H1B, he is contributing to 529 plan. But in case if he has to leave because of some visa issues or because of recession or something, so what happens to his 529? Should he pay that penalty and take it, or can he use that money in India? I know that.
Uh, that is it is not a question that I know much about. The thing is, the 529 plan in general is meant to serve the student's needs. But if the family moves back to India for whatever reason, then you're right. I suggest that you work with a tax advisor and kind of cash it out. But
Yeah.
if there is a chance that the
Sure.
child can come back, then obviously you want to keep the money in there, because it's better to have the money grow tax deferred in a 529 plan.
Yeah, Rajgaru, that is what I was just about to add. Even though we have to move back to India for whatever reasons, the money that you've already contributed to the 529, and you can continue to contribute as long as you have a US account, right? If there is any potential in the future that the kid can come back for education purposes, that 529 money can be applied for education reasons. Any other reasons that you would basically want to cash it out, obviously you need to be prepared for the penalties and the potential taxes. To Rajgari advice, I would, again, just plan it out. What are the chances that your kid would come back for education? And keeping it invested unless you need that money is probably a better option.
So this question is for you, Santosh. Can you give any one example of an alternate strategy?
Sure. We have multiple different strategies. One, basically, land banking is one of them, or it could be annuities could be one of them, right? There's just like 529 and 401k as an example are IRS tax codes. there is something called 7702, which is also IRS tax code. Basically, those are so there are some vehicles that uses that provision made by IRS that qualify for alternate strategies. Again, that's a loaded question, and I think it's best covered one-on-one with either Kishore or me.
Yeah, thanks, Santosh. Rajgar, again, this question is for you.
Yeah.
What are the restrictions for getting large amount of money from India to pay college fees here? Are there any restrictions, or is it more a CPA question?
It is definitely a CPA question. On the Indian government side, these days it is they have done a fantastic job. Again, I do not know what the current situation is, given where India is today about RBI restrictions. But if you're a legitimate, uh, I'm one too. So if you have a legitimate NRI account in India, whether it is NRO or NRE, it is fairly easy to move money from India to the US in dollars. The limits are very generous, and you can that is not an issue at all. And if you're not an NRO or NRE, I mean, meaning like if a parent or someone wants to send money, like grandparent wants to send money who's in India for a child's education, there are but there are limits there, right? I think you can send, if I'm not mistaken, I think $3,000 or $5,000 a year is what you can contribute to a grandchild. I'm not very familiar with on the Indian side. But here in America, as long as the money comes in legally, no matter which country it is coming from, there really are no restrictions that I am aware of. I mean, I've been doing this for a while. There really aren't any restrictions about funding money for legitimate college expenses. There should not be.
Thank you, Rajgaru. Again, this question either Santosh or Rajgaru, one of you can answer. Will 529 plans affect the chance of scholarship by any way? Rajgaru,
we covered that in the pros and cons of that. Yes, there could be an impact. Rajgar, you want to get any details?
Yeah. So yes, there will be an impact because I mean, I want to go back. I don't know if you remember the slide. We don't have to go back to the slide, but uh, your 529s. So there is a kind of a myth here. Your 529 plans by themselves don't directly impact your chance of getting aid. Where they will impact is that, remember we talked about your EFC. So essentially, your 529 plans. Uh, you, the moment you have a 529 plan, it will help you meet that EFC limit. So the thing is, when your EFC computation in and of itself will not ask you for whether you have a 529 account, right? So when you do the FAFSA form, they will not ask you how much money you have in and what is the current value, what is the appreciated value. They do not ask those kinds of questions. But uh, but you know what I'm saying? So the thing is, the fact that you have a 529, the fact that you have savings, the fact because you'll be revealing to them how much savings you have, that will definitely impact your EFC. Yes.
yeah, next
Yes,
question.
and basically it also reduces the eligibility for any parent loans and things like that, just like because everything is based off that EFC calculation, as Mr. Raj pointed out.
Correct.
Yeah. Next question, can we combine these plans, right? For example, can I put some money in 529, something in alternate strategy like that, or we need to use only one of the strategies?
Santosh, you go.
My answer is absolutely. These are different vehicles, and again, 520. The plans that we talked about, 529, Coverdale as an example, are education-specific plans. the alternate strategies and UTMA and things like that. So there could be a good diversified portfolio or a mix of those strategies. There's no restrictions on using one and not the other.
Right.
Next
And
thing is
if I might add to what Santosh said, on the contrary, I would say that you're you know, it is a great idea to diversify
Yep,
and not just go with
absolutely.
529s. Like I'm telling you, as a parent, I can tell you that our 529s dropped by 35% since February 22nd, and I'm really kicking myself in the foot because I looked at the plan in January. I was in India and I said, it's a great idea. You know, Jatin is going to college in August. Why don't I take the money out and put it in savings? And like, you know, like a fool, I didn't do it. You know, no, I mean, I certainly didn't do it because I was thinking, oh my God, you know, if we stay here, I mean, if the 529 money stays for another 4 or 5 months, it's going to ride the Trump economy and all that, and I'll make even more money in the 529s. I was not greedy. I was just being careless because I looked at it. I looked at all the accounts. We have two accounts, one in my wife's name, one in my name. We looked at all the funds, and then I said, I'll take care of it when I go to India, right? And then I'm sorry, when I go back to the US. I came back to the US. I completely forgot about it, and boom, you know, the market crashed. So the thing is,
Yeah.
it is good to have
No, no.
money in different accounts, in different plans.
Absolutely, Rajgaru. I think you drove a very, very strong point. The diversification is the key to financial success in general terms. Yeah, as we were growing up, we were always told never put all your eggs in one basket, right? So absolutely, you drove the point home, and I stopped myself from actually bringing up the market situation because it's like rubbing in somebody's wound, right? But since you were talking about your own personal experience, thank you for bringing that up. I mean, those are the market risk is one big factor in these kind of investments, and some of the alternate strategies that we talked about actually can give you market growth potential while not being impacted by the market downturns, uh, right? So thank you.
Right. And sorry, and I just want to, yeah, that's Santosh Garu says, thanks for that. I just want to clarify one thing, right? Um, whenever, this is a general financial planning, you know, piece of advice, right? Um, when you put money into one of these funds, you know, take you only need to take the money out when you need the money, correct? So
Yeah.
if you don't need the money, and when you have a bad market, the best advice is to kind of ride out the storm and hope that things will recover, correct? And so if you have a child in the fifth grade and your 529 plans, they tank, who cares, right? Because by the time, you know, by the time your child comes to the seventh or eighth grade, there is a very good chance that the market would have recovered. So, but in my case, my son is in the 12th grade and he's about to start college. So I must take money out, correct? So now I'm thinking, again, this is, and Santosh, please disagree with me. For the first year of I'm sorry, for the first year of expenses at UT, I'm not planning to dig into the 529s at all because I don't expect the 529 plans to recover in September. So I will probably, you know, arrange other funds, and maybe next year, right, a year and a half, I'm hoping by then things would have recovered. Do you see what I'm saying? That's when I want to get into the 529. Santosh, please.
Yeah. Good point, Rajgaru. And basically, as we all said, right, all of these are long-term plans. There is nothing that is a short-term, like get-rich-quick scheme kind of a thing, right? I mean, these are long-term investments. You need to set it. The example that Rajgaru said is somebody that's in a fifth grade student. You have a long time. Stay invested. Do not pull out the money yet. Do not panic. Leave it there, and the market will take care of itself, right? Now, that said, to your point, Rajguru, yes, that's a good plan. at least give it enough time so that the market rebounds and you can recover some portion of it. But unfortunately, there is another thing called right. There is something called as high cost of recovery in financial terms, meaning a 50% loss is cannot be recovered by a 50% gain. You need to actually get a 100% gain to recover, to get back to where you started in January, right? And when is the last time the market actually recouped 100% in a year? Right? It's wishful thinking, but at least there's some portion of it that could rebound. Let's hope for that.
Good point.
Next question is similar to that. Like, can we move 529 plan amount to any other alternate strategy without paying any penalty or taxes?
Not to my knowledge, because again, the only time you can avoid penalties is if it's applied to an educational expense.
Right. I agree with you.
But again, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I agree with you. It is not. It is not like you have a 401k plan from work and you have 60 days to move it into an IRA without any tax consequences. There isn't anything like that for a 529. I mean, if you have to liquidate your 529 account and then move money over to another instrument, and when you liquidate, you will be responsible for both penalties and taxes.
Thank you. I completely agree. Now, the one thing that you could do though, the Coverdale can be rolled into 529. So
Yes.
that's possible.
Correct.
Next question. What is the best option for people on temporary visas like H1B? Is 529 a good option or alternate strategies?
So this actually falls, there was another question that I missed earlier. So the visa status does not impact any of these strategies. All of these strategies are available to anybody, everybody. Again, there is no one plan that's better than the other. Which is why I said there is not one strategy that fits all. One size does not fit all. We need to basically understand what your situation is, what your goals are, what is the time horizon, what your risk appetite. There's multiple factors that we consider before we pick and recommend a specific strategy for your needs.
Is there any minimum or maximum investment into 529 plan?
To my knowledge, no. It could be as little as $50. It could be as much as thousands of dollars.
I agree. There are no minimums.
Okay.
There are no maximums. Correct.
There is a maximum to avoid the gift taxes and things like that. But again, to keep it high level, yes.
Right. You're right. What I meant is when parents invest in children, there is no maximum.
So yeah, I completely agree with that.
Rajgar, maybe you can give this example. One of the parents is asking, like, can you give a real-time example of some parents started with a plan when kid was some X years old, started saving some X dollars per month. How did it work out for that kid when it was time for his college and took the money out?
I'll be glad. I don't mind revealing to you our own plan. So my son was 17 months old in January of 2004. We started investing in a 529 plan, and we put away $1,000 a month, and then we did that for 8.5 years. Okay, so you do the math. $1,000 a month for about eight years, right? So for when I checked in January this year, the collective performance of the two funds for both me and my wife together, it was $1,000, right? $1,000 a month for both me and my wife. The collective performance of the funds were at $130,000. So approximately $84,000 had grown to 130,000 over over from 2004 to 2009, 2020, right? But all of that got wiped out. All of the, almost $30,000 got wiped out. So the thing is, I hope that answers the question, because uh, so I think, so here is my counsel, um, to, I think Santosh started his discussion early on, that, there are two components to, and he was very right. There are two components to how you grow wealth. One is money and one is time. So I strongly urge you, if you can, to start saving for your child's education, really, when you bring your child back home from the hospital. Okay. It's really that early that I would suggest, because, it is a question of time, right? And what I suggest that you do is, don't save so much money in a 529 that will, just save enough money for in state, right? Just do some math for in state in the state of Texas. Save that much money. And so start when your child is very young. Go 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and then you can stop. And then you let the money grow, right? You don't have to keep contributing until the child is 18, because, you know what I'm saying? So this way you can see the money grow. Uh, but here is, to Santosh's point earlier, what if you do the same, let's say 10 years of investing when your child is 8 years old, and you go from 8 to 18? That is not a very good strategy. It's better to start really early. Better to go from 1 year old to 9 year old, than from 8 years old to 17 years old, because it's all a question of learning the
Rajgaru
money.
here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I think you phrased it really well. Just to kind of further what you said, right? Money and time are two most important ingredients to build wealth. And here's a strong, profound statement I'm making. Money lost can be recovered, but time lost cannot be recovered. There is
Correct.
something called as basically cost of waiting too. So do not wait. Start as early as possible and give your money enough time to double itself, right, by investing in strategy. There's no one right or one wrong, but again, diversification and proper investment where it gives you compounding growth and enough time so that it can grow and ride the wave of the market, because markets are nobody can time the market. I mean, period. Even Warren Buffett himself cannot time the market, right? So, and when it comes to market or variable strategy, when you get in and when you get out are the two important entry point and exit point. And because we cannot time the market, do not wait before you start investing. The sooner you start, the better it is, and give it enough time.
Uh, it's
Kishore? Okay.
Yeah, it's already 8:28. We extended our session by nearly 20-25 minutes already. So yeah, thanks again, Santosh and Rajgaru, for your time. You can see all our numbers here. So again, each alternate strategy itself is like 1.5 hour topic, and as Santosh mentioned, right, based on risk appetite, based on your time horizon, based on how old are your kids, based on your affordability, there are so many factors based on which we can analyze which is the best strategy out of this many. We have like 10 to 20 different strategies. So yeah, you feel free to approach me or Santosh, especially like all this is like a free consultation for you. And Raj Kamalgar always can support with all the student counseling from middle school, high school, college. But that's a paid one if you want a face-to-face, one-on-one counseling. But you have all the numbers here. Please feel free to reach to one of us according to your needs. And yeah, I'll be sharing about all the future sessions next few weeks until we are maintaining the social distance, right? Even though we are physically away, but still we can be connected together. Let us use this time to learn these valuable lessons. So thanks everyone. Thanks Raj and
Thanks.
Santosh.
Thanks. Nice
Yeah.
seeing you all. Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you all for your time on a weekday evening. I know you could have spent this time elsewhere, but really appreciate, and hopefully you got some valuable points that you could apply for your kids' planning, college planning. Everybody have a great weekend and stay safe.
Thank you all. Stay safe. Bye everyone. Good night.